welcome back to the Contact Center KPI podcast. My name is Craig Ruff, the host here, and today we have Brian Jeppesen, Director of Contact Center Operations at Landry. He's been doing call centers and contact centers for about as long as I've been alive, so I think we're going to learn a thing or two today. Brian, not to kind of throw that out you under the bus right away, but I do think the amount of years you've been doing this is relevant for our conversation. Please take a moment and say hi.
Thanks, Greg, for inviting me. I'm old. I guess we could say that. But what's interesting is
wise. My dad would say wise.
It's when you talk about age and how old you are, and you think that just because you've been doing it a long time, you should be good at it. And that I played golf a long time too, but I'm not very good at it. So it's all about practicing and doing the right things and learning from the right people. So
Yeah, absolutely. I still pay to play golf, so until I get paid to play golf, then I'm still an amateur. So we're going to talk about customer experience scores and kind of return on customer experience today. And I think our podcast, we try to align everything around a KPI, and so we kind of came up with the idea of like a customer experience score. But I'd love some background from you as to when we approach you to join as a guest, like why is this something you want to talk about, Brian?
Well, I think as I've gone through the business, I think really comes down to how easy do we make it for our customers to do business with us, and how do we come up with an experience score? We've all heard of return on investment, but what's the return on the experience, and how do you get people come back to you time after time because you make it easy for them to do business with you. So that's where I want to go. And I know we've all had challenges, and my many years in the contact center business, staffing has always been a huge challenge. And so how do we staff appropriately, or to be able to answer people's calls that are calling us and handle those calls? So that's kind of where I started.
Cool, I love it. So let's make sure we have an understanding of there's got to be a balance though, right? Because what's maybe always best for the customer might not always be the best for the business. Or do you feel like maybe that's not true? Can we kind of maybe level set on that first before we dive into some details?
Yeah, so I think a customer effort, and when I think of a score, and I don't really have an exact formula for it, I think it's something, I think it would be great to be able to develop this over time and understand what are all the things that impact a customer effort. As far as contacting you, do you give them opportunity to contact you in their channel of choice? Or do you limit the way that they contact you? Once they do contact you, do you how easy for them to be able to speak to somebody or get their issue resolved or understand what their issue is and get it resolved quickly? And how long is handle time the right metric? Is that, I don't know, speed of answer, abandonments, all that stuff, I think all play into the customer's effort in getting their issue resolved. Most people contact you, and I'm a reservation center, so I like people calling me because it creates revenue. But most people are calling the contact center because they have a problem. And they don't necessarily want to call. They just want to get their issue resolved as effortlessly and quickly as possible.
Yeah. So I think whether you're in a support role or a reservations role or even a sales role, I think you hit on something that I want to unpack a little bit more, is allowing people to interact in the channel they want to interact in. Phone call, chat, email, self-service. How do you think about staffing organization, your contact center, around kind of what you think your target demographic is going to want to engage with you and what channel they're going to want to engage with you? And how do you think about that?
I think that's the key, is understanding your customer better. Most places, and even us where we're at today, we give them the option: you either call us or you book online, right? And that there really aren't a whole lot more options than that. And that's where, when you say companies, we have to decide, are we willing to invest in additional resources? Does it really drive more revenue for us? If based on our demand and where people are trying to contact us. If I open up additional channels, do people use those channels? And do I have to staff for them if they don't use those channels? So Sometimes you funnel your people the best way that you can to be able to drive the business. And I guess as long as it's working, it's fine as long as the demand is there. But I think you may open up additional opportunities for capturing people to drive different revenue if you make it easier for them.
How do you often in times of like sales and marketing, you'll run like a test in terms of like a marketing or demand gen channel. Have you ever, in your experience, do you ever set up like, hey, we're going to test out this channel to allow our customers to engage with us for 90 days, 120 days? Is that how you think about going out kind of validating some hypothesis around that, or how do you do that?
Well, we've done things like with social media, right? Hey, contact us through social media, through Facebook or TikTok or X, whatever it's called now. So different ways people can contact you or leave messages, and then have to be able to respond to those. I think one of the things that we experienced and we did was using virtual assistants to answer phone calls when we were challenged to staff, right? Especially after coming out of COVID, and people didn't want to go back to work, and I couldn't staff agents wise. So how was I going to be able to handle these calls? And we reached out to some partners and came up with a virtual assistant that initially day one I handled 87% of these simple calls. I had people calling and waiting 45 minutes to an hour just to get transferred to an extension, and it was just a horrible experience. And so adding this virtual assistant answers the call right away, finds out what their issue is, takes care of their issue immediately, and it just provides a much better experience. Dropped my abandons. I was abandoning 40 to 50% of my reservation calls, and
Oh, wow.
dropped my abandons way down under 10%. Gave people immediate answers, and it was handled. The first month I handled about 32,000 calls without the need to speak to an agent. So it just drove a much better experience. And that's when I started thinking about how do we make it easier for our customers to do business with us? And that was the first step. And we've expanded it to there now, can take full reservations and do a lot of different things. And moving people to channels of self-service has just been a big support for us. And that's the way people want to do their business. I don't like calling. I work in the call center business. I don't like calling, right? If I want to make, I can't tell you the last time I called to book an airline reservation or even a hotel reservation, right? I just do it self-service online. So how do we find the ways to make it easy for people to get what they want done?
So there's a lot to unpack there, but as you were kind of talking about that, I immediately went to so much like when you like look on LinkedIn about what's AI, what role is AI going to play in the contact center as it relates to the customer experience. And the thing is, like, software doesn't choose it doesn't want to go to work today. It doesn't get sick. It doesn't complain about being worked too hard. And so, like, you have to take a real hard look at, yes, we have a channel that people want to engage with us on the phone, but I have this human variable over here that might come to work today or might not come to work today. And so, like, have you found, yes, your booking rates or your abandonment rate went down, but as it relates to the experience the customer had with you, did you see a negative impact on that by deploying software to kind of fill that gap in the process with you guys?
No, I didn't see a negative impact at all. In fact, people were now being able to get their call answered immediately, 24/7, right? As you mentioned, it works there all day long, 100% utilization, doesn't get sick, and so it handles these types of calls. And we started off with a very simple call type first, right? Something that's simple that it's not very complex. But at the same time, I gave my customers the option: if you want to speak to a live person, you can speak to a live person as easily as you want. But if it's just a simple task that you want to get taken care of, that you don't want to have to sit and wait for somebody to answer the phone to be able to transfer you to the restaurant, this virtual assistant is happy to do it for you. So how do you make it conversational and easy for them? And again, in their channel of their choice. And if they choose to wait, they want to speak to an agent. There's certain things that my virtual assistant can't do, so they have to speak to an agent. But it just allowed my agents to be able to now focus on a little more complex things, be able to drive revenue. I pay my agents incentives on doing upsells, and when they're just taking transfer calls, they're not making any upsells. So it impacted them too, right? So it was a much better experience for my agents, and they saw more money in their pocket too.
I love that. So how do you and this might be the $1 million question because I don't think there is like a formula for this. But when you look at your abandonment rate went down, your hold time went down, all these things, you say that customers had a better experience, but how do you like objectively quantify that, Brian?
Well, I think there's obviously opportunities to do that. I don't do surveys for my customers
Okay.
currently. I think that there's obviously ways to do that. I look at the time that they were waiting before. Like I said, people waiting up to an hour sometimes to get their call answered. It's just that's a horrible experience. And so, if you can get it answered right away, I think that drives a better experience. And again, I don't have sentiment analysis stuff. We're looking to expand and grow, some of our use cases and what we're doing and understanding data analytics on our customers a little bit better. More, it's that technology is getting better and better all the time. So I think those are all tools that you can use to be able to identify how you're doing. You can do surveys. We choose not to. I stay busy. Most of my casinos are full all the time, so we stay busy. We have that enough demand, and so I just look at it on how hard I was making it for them before, and now giving them new options to be able to do it. And that's how I measure.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, like, I go back to my dad. He's like a grumpy old man, hates technology. And even he is like, you know what? I can get, my reservation booked so much faster and just kind of, the speed at which he's able to accomplish things directly impacts his customer experience if
Sure.
there was a score assigned to it. And I got to think that in the day we live in, like speed is an important factor of that, which it sounds like you've kind of taken advantage of and enabled your customers to do. Um, so, what about like your agents though, right? You said you incentivize them to for upsells, but do they ever feel like, hey, you're taking a part of my job's at risk by deploying something like that? Or is it that how you communicate to them?
So, that's an interesting question. And I look at this past year. My virtual assistant did the work of about 24 FTEs, right?
Okay.
And so people think, oh, so you got rid of 24 people. No, those are 24 people I couldn't find. I couldn't hire. It's not that's the call center business today. Is it's just tough to find staff. So it wasn't necessarily when I look at the return on investment and the cost. It wasn't that I reduced my cost by that. I just avoided having to spend that cost. So the cost to do it was much cheaper. But then when I start to look at my virtual assistant, not only uh, did some of those simple calls, and we build it to be able to do full reservations. That it books between 2,500 to 3,000 reservations a month, creates over $600,000 in revenue without the need to speak to an agent, and so I gained that also. And then when you look at how much potential revenue I was losing because I was abandoning 40 to 50% of my calls, that 30 to 40% abandonment rate, what does that create to, and how many millions of dollars in revenue is that? So I think when you look at it from that perspective, I don't think my agents. I didn't have to hire as many agents. My attrition went down because the agents that I did have are more experienced, more knowledgeable. They help out my customers better. My attrition dropped significantly, and I just don't have to hire as many people. So it really saves us and be able to help us focus better on. Every time you train somebody new, it's always a struggle with your customers initially, right? So it just gives my customers a better. They're getting more people who are better experienced and knowledgeable, and don't have to go through that same training process over and over.
So it sounds like, I mean, what's good for the customer is good for the business then, especially as it relates to, making sure you're identifying the right channels, but then utilizing the right mix of technology versus humans to support those channels while giving your customers the freedom of choice to engage with you, and however they want. And so, really thinking about that customer experience, it's identifying some maybe lagging indicators of the basic KPIs, hold time, abandonment rate,
Right.
all those things ultimately kind of bubble up into that customer experience score.
Right, right. I think that score. I think it's a combination of all those different KPIs. You know, how long did you have to wait to get answered? How long did the call take to get your issue resolved? Was the agent knowledgeable? Were they helpful? Were they friendly? Uh, all those things about that experience that you got and make you want to come back. So it's a combination of everything. It's I know that people I've seen studies that say people 60 to 80% of the people would rather speak to a live person, but 100% of the people just want to get their issue taken care of. Right? And so how do we do that and give them the options to be able to use digital when you want, human when you need, right?
Yeah.
And so just give your customers options and some things that don't. If I need to find out what time check-in is, I don't need to wait 20 minutes to find out what time check-in is. I can just ask the virtual assistant and say, check-in time starts at 4 o'clock, and whatever questions those are, right? Just simple things.
So, final question that I'm going to put you on the spot for, Brian.
We didn't prepare for this.
Do you think there's a world where 5 years, 10 years from now, agents are gone and it's all software?
No.
No?
I think there are. I think there will be more use cases, and people. There's a couple of things. I think people will become more comfortable using a virtual assistant.
Okay.
Everybody is with. We've all done it with our phones, right? So we're kind of used to that. Now they're getting more and more used to it. It's getting better at handling things and understanding what your needs are and be able to take care of that. And I think we're moving into more instead of large language models, now moving into large action models that actually it's not just answering questions for you, but it's doing stuff for you. And I think you'll start to find more and more of that stuff as time goes on. But I still think somebody's going to have to manage that on the other side. You're still going to be there's still more complex things, and you're always going to have a percentage of people that just want to speak to somebody that doesn't think their issue is getting taken care of.
Yeah, that's totally fair. That's totally fair. So, as part of these podcasts, Brian, we like to end with like one or two things that maybe a listener can take away to start doing today, like a tactical action item. And so, if I'm a new call center leader, contact center leader, maybe different channels, what's the one thing I should be doing today to maybe measure my customer experience score or get a handle on what that looks like? What do I do today?
I would first start to understand what's your customers' pain points, right?
Okay.
Where do they struggle with getting in touch with you or getting their issues taken care of? Are you utilizing data? Do you have data to understand why they keep contacting you? And if they're calling you because you have problems, are you taking that data to figure out what your problems are to fix your problems instead of just adding more staff to respond to people's problems? Fix your problem, right? So how do you use data to be able to identify where your issues are, help your customers identify where their pain points are, and help fix those, and really identify your call types that are simple, that you can offshoot into something more simple and taken care of, so your dedicated, live, experienced agents can handle your customers better.
Love it. I love it. Well, Brian, pleasure speaking with you today. I'm sure we could probably spend hours upon hours talking about all this and packing this a little bit more, but I really do think this was a great kind of bundled up abstract, if you will, of customer experience course. So any final words, Brian, before we part ways today?
No, I appreciate you letting me on and sharing, and let's go make our customers happy.
Love it. I love it. All right. Well, thanks, Brian, for joining us today. Have a great day.
Thank you.
All right.